For 5 years, billionaire Alexander Hartfield watched his twin daughters through hidden cameras, desperate to find someone who truly cared. Every specialist, nurse, and caregiver said the same thing: they'll never walk. They'll never speak. There's no hope. Alexander spent $50 million on treatments, traveled across 12 countries, begged the world's best doctors for answers. Nothing worked. Then a poor immigrant maid with no medical training noticed something no one else did. And what she discovered on those cameras will leave you speechless. Backhand index pointing right. Before we continue, subscribe, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. I believe this story found you for a reason. Main character pain. Alexander Hartfield had everything: a $2.3 billion tech empire, mansions on 3 continents, influence that could move markets with a single tweet. But one thing money couldn't fix: his 6-year-old twin daughters, Sophie and Emma, who hadn't walked or spoken since the accident. 3 years ago, his wife Victoria was driving the girls home from their ballet recital. A drunk driver ran a red light. Victoria died instantly. The twins survived, but the trauma left them paralyzed from the waist down, locked in a silence doctors couldn't explain. Since that day, guilt never left Alexander. He'd been at a business meeting in Tokyo. He'd missed the recital. He'd put work before family. And now, his daughters were trapped in bodies that wouldn't move, with voices that wouldn't speak. Setting description. The Hartfield mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut looked perfect from the outside: 25,000 square feet of Georgian architecture, manicured gardens, a fountain imported from Italy. But inside, there was silence. Sadness. Heaviness. Not peaceful silence, the kind that hurts. The kind that fills hallways where children's laughter used to echo. The kind that makes a father install 47 hidden cameras throughout his home, not to spy, but to search desperately for a miracle he didn't believe existed anymore. Then came Rosa Martinez. Just a 42-year-old immigrant maid from Honduras, with no degree, no medical training, no power, no voice in a world that barely noticed people like her. Rosa had her own struggle. Her teenage son Miguel needed surgery for a heart condition that was slowly killing him. The medical bills were $180,000, an impossible amount. This job at the Hartfield mansion, paying $3,200 a month, wasn't about luxury or prestige. It was about survival. Every paycheck brought her $3,200 closer to saving her son's life. The agency had warned her, "Mr. Hartfield is difficult. He's had 17 caregivers in 3 years. Don't expect kindness. Don't expect conversation. Just do your job, stay invisible, and maybe you'll last longer than the others." On her first day, Alexander barely looked at her. "The twins are in the East Wing. Feed them. Bathe them. Keep them clean. Don't talk to them unnecessarily. Don't move them without calling the physical therapist. And don't get attached, you won't be here long enough for it to matter." Then he turned back to his laptop, dismissing her existence. But Rosa didn't leave. She needed this job too desperately. While everyone ignored Sophie and Emma, treating them like fragile dolls to be maintained but never truly engaged, Rosa noticed things. Small things that shouldn't have mattered but did. When she hummed old Honduran lullabies while folding laundry, Emma's fingers twitched. When she arranged their breakfast, Sophie's eyes followed her movements, not blankly, but with focus. When thunder crashed during a storm, both girls tensed, their breathing changed, their pupils dilated. They were afraid, but no one had noticed because no one was paying attention. The physical therapist came 3 times a week, mechanically moving the girls' limbs through prescribed exercises, checking boxes on a form, collecting $400 per session, and leaving without ever looking into their eyes. The private nurses rotated shifts, scrolling through their phones, watching TV, treating the twins like furniture that occasionally needed maintenance. But Rosa saw something different. She saw 2 little girls trapped, not just in paralyzed bodies, but in a world that had given up on them. Something was wrong. And it wasn't what the experts said. Slowly, a bond formed. Not through words. Sophie and Emma couldn't speak, and Rosa's English was broken and heavily accented, but through something deeper. Small gestures that built connection. Rosa brought colorful fabrics from the dollar store and draped them over the girls' windows, so their room wasn't just clinical white. She learned that Sophie loved yellow and Emma loved purple, and started wearing those colors on alternate days. She discovered that both girls calmed down when she sang, so she sang constantly, while brushing their hair, while feeding them, while simply sitting beside them. She started reading to them from picture books, not in English, but in Spanish, her voice animated and warm, and she noticed their eyes tracking the colorful illustrations. Then the drawing started. Rosa would place crayons in the girls' hands, something no one else bothered to do because, what's the point? And gently guide their fingers. At first, just scribbles. But after 3 weeks, Sophie drew a yellow circle. The sun. After 5 weeks, Emma drew a purple flower. These weren't random marks. These were communication. These were 2 little girls telling someone, for the first time in 3 years, that they were still in there, still aware, still hoping. In a world full of expensive treatments and qualified professionals, they found connection with a woman who simply paid attention. Someone noticed. Dr. Patricia Morrison, the twins' primary physician, arrived for her monthly checkup and found Rosa sitting on the floor with the girls, all 3 of them surrounded by drawings. "What do you think you're doing?" Dr. Morrison's voice was ice. Rosa stood quickly. "I'm sorry, I was just." "You're not a therapist. You're not qualified to make medical decisions. These children are fragile. Do you understand what could happen if you do something wrong? But they're happy. They're vegetables," Dr. Morrison snapped, then caught herself, softening her tone professionally. "What I mean is, their condition is permanent. The kindest thing we can do is keep them comfortable. Not give them false hope. Not disrupt their routine with crafts." She turned to Alexander, who'd been watching from the doorway. "Mr. Hartfield, I strongly recommend you restrict the maid's access to the children. She's overstepping boundaries. This kind of unauthorized stimulation could cause setbacks." Alexander looked at Rosa, then at his daughters, then back to Dr. Morrison. "Fine. Rosa, limit your interaction to basic care only. No more activities." Rosa's heart sank, but she nodded. "Yes, sir." Now the choice was clear. Job and survival, obey, stay invisible, save Miguel. Or doing what's right, help the girls, risk everything. That night, Rosa cried in her small basement room, holding Miguel's medical bills. She couldn't afford to lose this job. She couldn't. But she also couldn't unsee what she'd seen in Sophie and Emma's eyes, hope. 3 weeks later, on a Friday night, everything changed. Alexander was in London for a business conference. The night nurse had called in sick, and the agency couldn't find a replacement until morning. Rosa was alone with the twins. Around 2 a.m., the fire alarm began shrieking through the mansion. Rosa ran to the twins' room. Smoke was seeping under the door from the hallway. An electrical fire had started in the west wing and was spreading fast. The emergency protocol was clear: evacuate immediately. Call 911. Get out. But Sophie and Emma were paralyzed. The wheelchair lift required electricity that had just cut out. The emergency backup generator hadn't kicked in. Rosa weighed barely 130 pounds, and each girl weighed 45 pounds. She'd have to carry them both, down 2 flights of stairs, through smoke, with flames spreading. The calculation was brutal. If she tried to save both girls and failed, all 3 would die. If she saved one, the other would burn. If she saved herself and called for help, emergency responders might not arrive in time. Rosa realized, if I do nothing, this ends badly. If I act, I might lose everything. In that moment, she remembered Miguel's face. Remembered that she needed this job, needed the money, needed to survive. But she also remembered Sophie's yellow sun and Emma's purple flower. She chose courage. Hands shaking. Heart racing. Rosa wrapped Sophie in a wet blanket, hoisted her onto her back, and made the first trip down the smoke-filled stairs. Her lungs burned. Her eyes streamed. Every step was agony as Sophie's weight pressed against her shoulders. She laid Sophie on the front lawn, then turned back toward the flames. "Please, God," she whispered in Spanish. "Please let me save them both." The second trip was worse. The smoke was thicker. The heat was unbearable. Emma was heavier somehow, or maybe Rosa was just weaker now, oxygen-deprived and terrified. Halfway down the stairs, Rosa slipped. She fell hard, her ankle twisting with a crack she felt more than heard. Emma tumbled from her arms. For one terrible moment, Rosa thought she'd failed. Thought she'd killed the child she was trying to save. But then, Emma moved. Not falling. Not sliding. Moving. The little girl's leg twitched. Then bent. Then pushed. Emma stood up. For the first time in 3 years, Emma stood on her own 2 feet, grabbed Rosa's arm, and pulled. "Come," Emma whispered, the first word anyone had heard her speak since the accident. Then, the miracle moment. Together, Emma half walking, half crawling, and Rosa limping on a broken ankle, they made it outside. Silence broke. Everything changed. But instead of gratitude, chaos. The fire department arrived. Paramedics rushed forward. And someone screamed, "What have you done?" Dr. Morrison had been called because the house alarm was connected to the family's emergency contacts. She arrived to see Emma standing, supporting Rosa, both of them covered in soot and blood. "Step away from that child," Dr. Morrison commanded. "Security! Someone restrain this woman." 2 paramedics pulled Emma away from Rosa, laying her on a stretcher despite Emma's protests. She was walking, a firefighter tried to explain. "Impossible," Dr. Morrison snapped. "She's in shock. Adrenaline. The maid probably dropped her, caused further injury, and now we're seeing muscle spasms that mimic movement." Rosa tried to speak, but the smoke had damaged her voice. All that came out were painful rasps. "What have you done?" Dr. Morrison repeated, louder now for the gathering crowd. This woman was specifically told not to interfere with these children's care, and now look, one of them may have sustained additional injuries. Accusations. Threats. The promise of lawsuits and criminal charges. The hero was punished before being understood. Rosa was taken to the hospital in handcuffs, arrested for reckless endangerment and practicing medicine without a license. The story exploded across social media within hours. Immigrant maid arrested after billionaire's disabled children injured in fire. 3 days later, at the hospital, the truth came out. Alexander had returned from London immediately. He'd reviewed every second of footage from his 47 hidden cameras. What he saw changed everything. The cameras showed months of moments he'd missed while traveling, while working, while building his empire. Rosa singing to the girls every morning. Sophie's first intentional crayon mark. Emma's eyes tracking movements with clear comprehension. Both girls' vital signs changing, heart rate, breathing patterns, brain activity, during Rosa's interactions. The physical therapist spending exactly 12 minutes with each girl before leaving, never varying the routine, never checking for responses. Dr. Morrison reviewing medical charts for 30 seconds per visit, never actually examining the children. But the most damning footage was from 6 months earlier. Dr. Morrison was captured in Alexander's study, speaking to someone on her phone. "The Hartfield twins are a goldmine. As long as they stay paralyzed, we bill $40,000 monthly in specialists' fees, therapy sessions, and consultations. If they show improvement, that revenue stream ends." The experts knew. They ignored it. Because of money. Because of greed. The secondary medical team Alexander called and confirmed what Rosa had somehow understood intuitively: the twins' paralysis was psychological, not physical. The trauma of losing their mother had locked their bodies down, but the neural pathways were intact. What they needed wasn't more expensive treatment. They needed someone to see them as children, not as income. the miracle didn't come from power. It came from care. Alexander Hartfield stood outside Rosa's hospital room, a man who'd commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals, now unable to find words. Rosa lay in bed, her ankle in a cast, her voice still rough from smoke inhalation. Beside her sat Miguel, whose surgery had been paid for, anonymously, the day after the fire. "I'm sorry," Alexander finally said. "I'm so sorry." Rosa looked at him with eyes that held no anger, only exhaustion. "Your daughters, they okay?" "They're perfect. Because of you." Alexander's voice broke. "Emma is walking with support. Sophie started talking yesterday. The neurologists say full recovery is likely. You saw what 47 cameras and a dozen specialists couldn't see." I paid attention, Mr. Hartfield. "I know. And I didn't." Alexander sat down, his posture no longer that of a billionaire, but of a father who'd failed. "I installed those cameras to watch for miracles, but I wasn't looking for the right thing. I wanted some dramatic medical breakthrough. What you gave them was simpler, you treated them like children. Like they mattered. Pride broke. Gratitude replaced ego. All charges have been dropped. Dr. Morrison and 3 others are facing fraud investigations. And I'd like to offer you something." He placed an envelope on Rosa's bedside table. "That's a contract. Not as a maid. As the twins' primary caregiver and a permanent member of our family. Salary, $180,000 annually. Full benefits. Housing in the main house. Miguel's medical care, including college, fully covered. If you'll have us." Rosa stared at the envelope, tears streaming down her face. "Why?" "Because my daughters need you. Because I need someone around who sees people, not problems. Because you risked everything when everyone else, including me, had given up." Apology. Reunion. Healing. 2 weeks later, Sophie and Emma took their first steps in 3 years, right into Rosa's arms. 6 months later, Alexander shut down his tech company's international divisions and started a foundation, the Victoria Hartfield Center for Pediatric Recovery. Its mission wasn't to fund expensive treatments. It was to train caregivers, especially immigrants, especially people without fancy degrees, to recognize what doctors sometimes miss, that healing starts with seeing people as human. Rosa ran the training program. Miguel, now healthy, volunteered there after school. And Sophie and Emma? They were running, laughing, living, not because of $50 million in treatments, but because one woman paid attention. Sometimes miracles don't come from hospitals. They come from people who pay attention. Not the richest hands, but the willing ones. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button. If you believe in the power of paying attention, subscribe to this channel. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in Rosa's situation? Would you have risked everything? And tell me, where are you watching from? I want to see how far this message travels. More incredible stories coming soon, don't miss them. Remember, the people who change the world aren't always the ones with the most power. Sometimes, they're the ones with the most heart. Folded hands.